Welcome to the Built to Last podcast, a community for coaches founded on the principles encourage, equip, and empower. We are performance coaches working for eternal purpose. Now, here are your co-hosts, Charlie Ray and Justin Bentavania.
Hey guys, welcome back to Built to Last. We're here to give you another great episode. Just wanted to give you a quick update on what's going on right now in our world with the COVID. Obviously, things are starting to open back up. So I want to challenge you guys as coaches, reach back out to your athletes. See how they're doing. We probably send them workouts and that kind of stuff, but also just check up on them with their hearts, see how they're doing personally with their family and that kind of stuff. I know it can be very difficult when you put a lot of your weight and identity in your sport and it starts to get taken away. So we really just want to encourage you guys to reach out to your athletes, and guys, rest in God's sovereignty. I was reading something about that earlier today, Justin, that God is the one who's in control. And we sometimes forget that. We get so worried about all the things going on in this world, and we forget that God is in control and he loves us. Guys, Built to Last, we're here to encourage and to equip and to empower you with resources and also with the community. So how can you get involved? How can you help out? Like us, share us. Please give us feedback on how we can make this even a better podcast and a better ministry to you. Ultimately, we want to make this a ministry. We want to make this a resource for coaches. So Justin, go ahead and give us the verse of the month.
Absolutely. Yep. So verse of the month this month, guys, is from James 1:2-4. And it reads, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." And as we transition, guys, out of this coronavirus quarantine and pandemic, and really I think things are starting to open up now, that verse is a great reminder even to me that, through all the trials and the difficulty of this quarantine, and some people have really had some trials, as we progress out of this thing, that perseverance has grown in us. And maybe it's hard to see it right now, but we can look back on this time at some point and say, wow, that was not without purpose. It wasn't good, and there were some bad things that came along with it, but maybe there was a purpose there in our life that we could take something from and get better because of it and grow from it. And so I just want to share that with you guys, and turn it back over to you, Charlie.
Yeah, so speaking of purpose, our guest on this show was Coach Michelle Diltz, and she is somebody who lives her life on purpose. I've known Michelle for a while. I did an internship with her at Alabama, so it was pretty awesome getting to do the interview with her. She'll share kind of her background, but she's essentially been at Alabama since 2005 as an assistant strength coach there, working with the women's softball team and the golf team. And then she also oversees a lot of the internship development and the cheer and dance team. Overview of the episode, guys. She goes into, like I said, her background and her philosophy and her story. She also talks about how to take notes. An incredible note-taking process that hopefully you will take notes on how to take process. And then finally, she talks about how to live your life on mission. So we really just hope you guys can enjoy this and get a lot out of it. Hey guys, welcome back to Built to Last. We're excited to do another episode. Here we got Michelle Diltz. She's at the University of Alabama working with softball and golf, as well as overseeing some of the interns there. And she is somebody that's been a mentor for mine for a long time. I did an internship at Alabama. And Coach, welcome to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be sharing my path with everybody around.
Awesome. Well, if you can, just go ahead and go into a little bit of background with your, how you got into this amazing field that we're in.
So strength and conditioning kind of hit me. I just was one of those overworking athletes. I did too much all the time. High school athlete, played softball at Texas Women's University in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Was a center fielder there. Grad school, Texas A&M. I worked under Rachel Ellsworth as a graduate assistant volunteer. Also worked for the softball team there. And then I met the right people at the CSCCA conference. And when this job opened up, my name was one of the first ones on the list. I got an interview. 2 weeks later, I was living here. That's been 15 years. It's been great. I've had the same coaches for all 15 years. So I've been very honored to be in this position.
Wow. 15 years, the same place with the same coaches. That's
That is rare. That is
It's
rare.
very rare.
And it's cool to say that you got that position through opportunity, but also through connection.
Yeah, it was very much, I made myself available at that conference to learn and ask questions. And that's one thing Ray always told me, was that I asked a lot of questions, and I still do. So that kind of helped, because I kind of met the right people at the right time. And when it's happened to be the right fit.
And it's funny too, because even like my job that I have now, I can look back and say, one of my biggest mentors, my biggest mentor to this day is our head strength and conditioning coach here. I met him 6 years ago when I was a volunteer here. So when the position opened up, I, again, think kind of like yourself, I was maybe one of the higher people on the list there. But every position that I've gotten is really because I've had some sort of connection there somehow. And so it's a great point that you made early on about how important it is to have connections and to build your network early on in your career. Any tips for young strength coaches in terms of building their network?
You have to break out of your comfort zone. As a high school athlete, I was super quiet. I know people that know me today would be really shocked to hear this, but I was very shy. I wasn't confident. I didn't believe in myself. And just growing and maturing and putting myself in situations that I would have never thought to put myself in allowed me to grow. Maybe I wasn't great at the first time, but I got better and better at it. Putting yourself out there, reaching out, talking to the coaches, asking the questions, and making sure they know that you really want to do this. This is my dream come true. This is what I can't see myself doing anything else. I have a couple things that I might have, like, if I really wasn't doing this, I might be a kindergarten teacher. So like, that's kind of something I would want to do. But it's just, let people know that you have passion for it and that you're willing to put in the work.
That's awesome. And going off of that, coach, so now that you're in a position where you love what you do, you have a position where you have some stability in terms of the coaches haven't really changed, and you've been a part of these programs for a while now. How has your coaching philosophy grown since you started Alabama, and what is your coaching philosophy now?
My coaching philosophy was whatever my mentor's coaching philosophy was at that point in time. Coach Ray set me up to be very successful with my planning, my training, how she interacts with her athletes. Very similar philosophy. You're working multi-joint, you're working ground-based, you're lifting, you're creating the power, the strength that those athletes need to be an overall athlete. It's shifted on how I train them just a little bit, but I still, if you look back at the core of my training, it's very similar to how Ray taught me to train. And I saw it with my own eyes working with her athletes. We trained as graduate level interns. We trained under her as well. So we weren't just there interning. We also got coached by her. And so I saw the results that it had on my lifting and my production. So I really I don't want to say conjugate method, but I believe in lifting. I believe in squatting, bench pressing. We press, but also making sure that it's very personal to those athletes. I guess that's one thing that has changed over is it was very black and white, X's and O's. This is what you're doing. This is how you're doing it when I first started. Now it's more, how do you feel? What are you going through right now? Do we need to decrease the intensity? Or if you're feeling great, maybe we can bump it up a notch today and get a really good training week out of, because we don't know what we're going to get next week. It's very gray. I kind of plan very much in the gray area where it could be adapted one way or the other, depending on what that athlete's feeling.
Yeah, and that's something that I noticed when I was interning on you, is like you would meet the athlete where they're at, and that's something that's super important. And I've learned to do that, especially in season, managing stress and saying, okay, they're not feeling so good today, so let's back it off. Let's make it a little bit lighter, make it more of a recovery focus. Or, man, they're feeling great. Let's really push it with the strength levels. And that's something that I've always seen you do with your athletes. And you have the baseline, but then you tailor it individually. And even with like modifications, like with softball, you always have to be in the different positions, and you're within those positions, you have different styles of bodies and injuries, previous training ages, that kind of stuff. So, yeah,
And
that's something.
I've given my athletes even more ownership of the program now because some of them hate squatting. Some of them hate deadlifting. Some of them hate doing lunges or whatever it may be. And so on our big lift days, they actually get to choose whether they deadlift or they squat, whether they front squat or they back squat. One, because I can go a little bit heavier on the lifts that they like doing. If they don't like doing deadlift, I'm not really going to get much out of them during season. Obviously, during off season, it's a little bit different, but during season, if I want it maintained or hopefully get a little bit of increase in strength, I usually give them a little bit more ownership of it, and they push a little bit harder when it's their idea versus very black and white. This is Michelle's idea. She's trying to kill us. I'm not going to be able to move, whatever it may be. So over the past couple of years, I've kind of transitioned into that because I have a really strong split between the girls that like to squat and the girls that like to deadlift. And so it's pretty even and they get a choice. Still percentages are the same. The reps are the same. It's just where they're loading at.
And we even have, and I just want to cut in for a second, we even have a nice following now from coaches who maybe aren't even sports performance coaches. They're coaches, And so one of the questions I even get a lot from the parents of recruits and things like that is they always ask me kind of, what does my kid need to be doing now and things like that. So you said that you sometimes for softball athletes, they'll either squat or deadlift and they have a preference of the two. Mm-hmm. For just general fitness for softball, is there any like general recommendations you'd give in terms of the sports performance side of things?
I'm not a huge train for a sport. I feel like you need to train to be an athlete and then the sport will take care of itself because they're playing that all the time. For anybody that's talking to me, I'm a big believer in jump rope. I think jump rope is like the best thing ever when it comes to ground contact time and just being aware of what you're doing on and off the ground, your body placement. So jump rope is always like at least my number one or number two things that you can add to your program. I like body weight exercises. Most of the time, especially I work with predominantly female athletes. Most of them are coming in at a very young training age. They really don't know the proper squats, how to lunge, how to do a push-up, how to do an assisted pull-up, whatever it may be. But learning those basic movements is huge. Most female athletes aren't taken outside or with their dads aren't saying, hey, do 10 push-ups today. Like and this is a big assumption. Most guys are growing up doing push-ups and pull-ups. The female athletes aren't getting that. And so I just feel that when you come in, when you're preparing, if you have that base knowledge, you have good form, you can start loading to create improvements.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, Coach, I wanted to transition to talking a little bit about one of the things I learned from you, which is note taking. You're somebody that takes lots of notes. You probably have lots of notes right now in front of you.
I have all kinds of stuff in front of me.
What is your philosophy with note taking, with providing feedback, and even just self-assessment? Like I know for you kind of take June and July when you're kind of in your off season to really assess, reflect, and then prepare for that next phase. What is your philosophy with note taking?
I feel like we're learning. Like I said in the beginning, like my program's very similar, but how I approach it, maybe how I organize it is going to be a little bit differently. And that's because I've looked back at what I liked, what I didn't like, how the athletes responded, how they didn't respond. So after every workout, I still print paper. Nothing's really on tablets. I can touch it. I sit there and I take notes. If I didn't get to something in the workout, I'm spending too much time on one area, maybe I'm putting too much volume in there, I'll make a note out to the side. So when I'm preparing the next week's training program or the next year's training program, I can look back at that and be like, oh yeah, I really didn't like the flow of this. The flow of the weight room with the other teams in there sharing the weight room just was too chaotic. And so that's how it starts. Just during this season, usually May and June, I start taking notes. Like, what did I like about off season? What did I not like about off season? What do I really feel is my core curriculum that I need to have during the off season? What is something that if my coaches don't like it, I am perfectly fine with getting rid of? And then I take that to my coaches and I'm like, what did you like that we did this year? What did you not like about this year? What can I do better to get your points across, your culture that you're trying to get across? And then they just let me know. They're like, one year I'm not a huge fan of deadlifting for myself because I'm horrible at it. Like, I'm not the greatest deadlifter. Like, that's just, I'm not great at it. It's very important, but I just never programmed it because I was never great at it. And my coaching was still very baby, like very young coach, very, like it wasn't where it needed to be with the athletes. And so finally my coach came to me, he was like, Michelle, I really want a trap bar deadlift. I was like, okay. So that had to go in the program and I had to learn it. And I had to put it into my training plan. But just looking back at that, but now I also get my athletes feedback. I send them out in May, June, after they get done, hopefully at the World Series or the National Championship. And I said, what are your top 5 lists? What are your least 5? What are your least favorites? And what do you want more of? Like, what can I do to make you feel better, to perform at your top level? And what I noticed over the past couple of years is they wanted more running. And so I've incorporated that into the program and they buy in a lot better when they have that input. And so those note-taking kind of helps evolve each year to make sure you're not stagnant. You're not running the same program every year, no matter if it works or not.
And it seems, Coach, like you have, if I can kind of summarize, it sounds like you have a great reflection process, right? Because I think so many times we finish up with our training sessions and we're on to the next team, or we're on to the next task of the day. And even for athletes, they come off the practice field and then they're off to class. And as a society, we just don't reflect enough.
Right.
You know, I even read a book on leadership one time with John Maxwell, and he was talking about how there was a study done on people at the end of their life. What are the kind of top 3 things that they regret? And one of those things was not taking time to just sit back and reflect more. And right. So, and it's cool
Luckily,
hearing how
I have 2 teams. So those are my main 2 focuses. So that helps. Okay. And if I was when I first got here, I had women's basketball, I had softball, I had golf, I helped with track, I helped with football. There wasn't as much reflecting when I had all those teams, but I still felt like that's important. I'm very much a people person. And so reflecting on how it affects other people is it's very important to me.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind talking about your faith story, what's your journey with becoming a Christian and kind of what that looks like now for you?
Okay. So growing up, went to church. My mom was CCD. I was raised Catholic. So we went to church Wednesday night, we went to church Sunday morning, we went to church Sunday night. My mom was very much as part of it. So I kind of just got drug along. High school, I had a bad experience with the church, so I just kind of left. I disappeared, really didn't, I still identified as a Christian, but I was never really, I never went to service, I never went to church. And that lasted until about probably 6 years ago. And I really felt like I was missing something. Like something was missing. I didn't know what it was. I was in a great relationship with my husband. My daughter was doing great, but something was missing. Something in my life just felt right. So we started looking around, found a great home church, and it's just kind of progressed through there. Just kind of reaffirming my faith and my Christianity was really important to me. And so in bringing that to for my family, for my husband who grew up I'm in a non-church going family, and bringing that to him and sharing that with him so that we could raise our daughter in that lifestyle, that feeling of belonging. And so I just, over the past couple years, I've really started to dig in. I read the Bible for the first time, probably 4 years ago, front to back. Still very much, training age is really young in my, my
Bible training age.
Exactly. But right now, like I'm doing a chronological Bible study. I
Wow.
try to reflect. I try to live my life to be a Christian and what a Christian is supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then if I can even go a step further, Coach, now that you've read the Bible and now you're trying to, go from that state of, I think they call it in the Bible, like when we're kind of drinking spiritual milk and then it's time for, some meat, as you're progressing in your faith walk, how do you go about sharing that with athletes, or how do you go about involving that in your daily life?
So I try to meet them where they are, very similar to their lifting. I meet them where they are. Wherever they are, I've probably been in their spot, especially in their college years, because that's where I was. Like, I didn't belong. Like, I didn't have a church. And so just being there and showing them what it means. Like, I love them no matter what. Who they are, what they're going through, whatever they're dealing with, I love them. Does that mean that I'm always soft and delicate with them? No. That means I have to be stern with them. But you have to love them where they are. If you try to automatically assume they're at a certain point and they're not, you might scare them away. They might get intimidated. But just loving them. Just love them for who they are.
And now that we've done a few of these episodes, Charlie, I mean, I'm even here. It's funny hearing kind of similar concepts come up, like with a lot of our previous guests as well. Whether one guest focused more on, living uncommon or, maybe not always using the most Bible verses, but just living it. Then another guest talks about, like when we had Ron McKeefer, he spoke about living a certain lifestyle. And when they ask questions, that's the time to kind of go forth and share more, but a lot of these concepts really do come back to what you're saying, Coach. When you just love them and they know that you care about them and have their best interests in mind, first of all, it makes a great name of what it means to be a Christian and not always have to preach to somebody. And second of all, I think you're going to be more effective in your coaching because now they know this person wants what's best for me, spiritually, physically, in all areas. And then you get to, I'm sure, connect with them on a better level when it's just on the floor in the weight room.
Yeah. When they know that you really, truly love them and you're not just out to make my name or try to write another, like when they really know that you love them, they're able to come to you with a lot more and they're able to speak openly about what's going on with them and know that I'm going to love them no matter what. Like I've had the best feeling in the world was I had women's basketball and I had this little player was a toot and I kept loving her and she was all 4 years, she was the biggest toot. Like I had to kick her out of practice. I had to kick her out of weights. Like she was just, but I just kept loving her. Like I kept giving her hugs. I'd still, oh, great job. About 2 years ago, I get a phone call. I had the same phone number all 15 years. So I get a phone call and she's like, hey, Coach D. I was like, yeah, hey. She goes, I'm sorry. I was like, what are you apologizing for? She goes, I was really bad to you, and I just want you to know that I love you, and you got me through a lot. And I was like, oh.
Wow.
I was like, all up in my feels after she gave me that call. But that's what being a strength coach actually means to me.
Yeah, and being a strength coach is so much more than just getting them stronger. It's that we created this podcast to try to say we want to build lasting athletes for all of eternity. And so, even looking at your role, like essentially, I mean, I remember you told me you're like an older mom to them. Like you view yourself as being a mother figure to them. And I try to view myself as being a father figure in that sense, or an older brother, almost that mentor type role for these athletes. What would you say is something that you do that makes a good mentor, and like how you mentor your athletes? And then also tying into what you did to me when I was an intern, what makes a good mentor for even interns and then athletes?
Other than telling you to stop asking so many questions, Charlie?
You asked a lot of questions. She got me.
Blowing them up.
Charlie was great. No, just being there and answering those questions and knowing that I am going to listen to you. Like if they think they're going to tell you something and it's going to go one ear and out the other, and I'm not going, if they tell me something they don't want anybody else knowing, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to tell anybody that they're not ready to go on and be able to do that. That builds up trust. And that to me is a great mentor, because when you're listening to somebody, I'm not a counselor, but if I say, that probably wasn't the smartest decision, what can we do differently next time? They're like, yeah, that was dumb. I probably should have done something a little bit differently. And then I can help them through, but they're the ones coming up with their lesson. Being able to not just tell them exactly how it's supposed to be done, but them actually seeing what the path should be.
And then expanding on that, Coach, I guess that's kind of what is a mentor? Who are your mentors in particular? I know now you're a master strength and conditioning coach, and congratulations on that. I'm sure you've had mentors, though, along the way. Anyone in particular you want to talk about?
I've had Rachel Ellsworth is still one of my mentors. She's a competitor. She's like one of my enemies in the SEC, especially for softball. But I call her all the time. I still probably ask her too many questions. She's probably like, oh no, Michelle's texting me again. Terry Jones, he's my next door neighbor in our offices. He is a great man of faith. He probably helped me the most when I was initially trying to make the decision to find the difference. Great man, and he's really the one that kind of taught me to mother my athletes. He always told me, he was like, if you don't know your athletes, you don't know where they're from, you don't know their background, they're not going to care about what you have to say. You have to invest in them for them to invest in you and to listen. And so knowing where your athletes are coming from, what is their background, and that way you can be there for them. He's the one that hired me here at Alabama 15 years ago. So he's kind of like a father to me. And he was also the one that put my jacket on at the when I was named master.
Wow.
And so that huge mentor to me in my life, and still he's still mentoring me. He's still telling me what to do. And then those are my two main strength conditioning mentors. My college coach is a huge mentor. I was a walk-on, and she believed in me. By the end of my career, I was starting. I was out of my shell. I was talking. I wasn't shy anymore. I was able to present myself and communicate to people. When I first got there, I was not. Obviously, I can't say enough about mom and dad. They're kind of the cornerstone of how I am the way I am. My mom was very much, you love people. Like, that's just what it is. You love people. And so that, obviously, they're huge mentors in my life.
Yeah. And like, one of the things going off what you're saying is the love that you have for athletes and for others is a love that has been demonstrated through these mentors in your life who are pouring into you. Like, Coach Jones, he's awesome. He poured into you to now allow for you to be able to pour into others. And so it's that kind of cyclical process. And it's the same way with our relationship with God. When God's love, and when we're reading the Bible and going to church and being around God's people, his love is being poured into us. And then we're able to be filled to then pour out into others. And in a similar way with, like, trying to find work-life balance with, okay, how do I have time to invest in being filled with my family, with my faith, and taking time to do those things to fill you? What do you do in your own life to have work-life balance with Brady and BJ?
So unfortunately, last year was not a great year for me in my setting aside time for me and my Bible reading and my life. I do a one word by John Gordon every year. Like, I read that to prepare for the year. I pick a word. Last year was champion, and it was to champion others around me. Well, I left off myself. I forgot completely about what I needed to pour into me. And so this year, my word is discipline, and not because I'm in trouble, but to discipline myself to wake up in the morning, read the Bible, listen to, there's a brief synopsis of the year Bible that I'm doing this year. And she breaks it down to layman's terms, what kind of the Bible is what the story really means.
Yeah.
And so I'll listen to that, and then just making sure that I'm spending time and disciplined in my day to be able to pour some time into me, because I wasn't working out as much. I just wasn't. I was pouring into everybody else but myself. And so this year I've kind of really kind of stepped back and was like, okay, if I'm going to survive, I need to make sure I have time for me. Because along with strength conditioning, and everybody, like, strength conditioning are long hours. I also have a 10-year-old daughter who's very active in dance, so it's getting her everywhere. Very active in my church. I volunteer at one of the hospice of West Alabama here in town. And then I'm also a Girl Scout troop leader. So I have a Girl Scout troop of about 22 girls right now, from kindergarten all the way up to high school. And so not only am I doing all this, but I'm also being a Girl Scout troop leader. And so I left off myself. I was pouring everything into them. And so this year it's about being disciplined to myself, allowing myself to have those times. And I'm also very OCD in my planner. My planner is very color coded,
Yes.
very on top of it when it comes to organization. I've got 3 folders in my backpack that I carry all the time that has different slots for different things. So I have 3 different to-do lists. I have my work to-do list. I've got my home life to-do list, and then I've got my Girl Scout to-do list. And so I've got very much a to-do list type of person.
And I can attest to your organizational skills, because I remember I opened up the oasis of strength and conditioning journals, which is right behind you. There's a drawer. You open it up and it's got thousands of articles, all topically organized, and they all have her like handwritten notes on it. And I'm like, I want this one day. Like, I want something like this one day.
That's cool.
Yeah, well, see, and I have every single workout from the time I started here on campus. I have every single workout that I've ever written saved. And it has my notes on it. So for the last 15 years, I have 15 years of softball off seasons, notes, and everything.
Any apps you recommend? Anything that like keeps you on track, or more so just the hard copies?
I just use an Outlook calendar, and I just have a couple of them.
Okay, yeah. And so it's funny because our next question here is about ego and keeping yourself in check. It sounds like you're so busy that it's hard to even worry about having an ego when you're running around and things like that. But so I'm sure it's not a problem for you. But is there anything that you do specifically to keep your ego in check?
My problem is and this is my fight with making sure that I know that it's not what I do, it's God's plan.
Yeah.
And so I very much have a hard time. I'm very much obviously a checklist, drive-oriented person. And so I'm like, well, if I do all this, then God will love me more, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'll be better. And that's my biggest thing is like, oh my gosh, I'll be better if I do this. Whereas that's not the truth. And I have to take it back a step. So like, it's not really ego, but it is necessary. Like, I think that I can control things when that's not the case.
That's
like,
a great
I can
point.
control what I can, but at the end of the day, God has a plan for me.
And just to summarize what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, a high view of God keeps your ego in check. Like realizing that He's in control, that He is sovereign, and that we're saved by grace through faith. We're not saved by our works to like, work hard and maybe I'll earn His love. It's like, no, He gives us unconditional free love through His Son, Jesus Christ. But having a high view of, okay, God is the one that's in control, because I can relate to you in a lot of these ways. Like I like my to-do list and control and calendars. And I think a lot of us do. We like to be in control, but at the end of the day, we control what we can. But at the end of the day, we also focus on that God ultimately has a plan for our lives. And that's awesome.
That was a great summary. You said it a lot better than I did. So thank you.
Well, awesome. We'll transition into kind of talking about some different lessons you've learned. I know. So you've been in the field for 15 plus years and probably had a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of great times, a lot of things that maybe have been tough. What has been 1 or 2 difficult things that you've gone through, and how has God kind of pulled you through those? What was 1 or 2 things you maybe learned from that trial?
Trying to think, because a bunch of them I've already said about remembering that I'm it's not my control, that that it's going into play. Just sometimes just being still. I don't sit still well. As you can tell, I haven't sat still this entire interview. Like, I'm moving all over the place. If you can see my legs, they're like tapping underneath my desk right now. I don't sit still. I don't do well with quiet time. And so I get super wound up, super anxiety, and then I'll wear myself out to get sick. So I just go. I have to remember, and that's one of the things that I've been trying to focus on this year is with the discipline, is spending that time to be quiet, to sit, to listen. And I think that's with Champion last year. I think that's what God was trying to show me. He was like, yeah, you can be a champion for all those things, but you're going to run yourself down and you're not going to have anything else to give. So I think that was really something in my reflection from last year over the winter break, was very much that. Like, I will wear myself down completely and then be out because I've just completely made myself sick. I've gone too much, too hard, and then I'm out. And so I really feel like that's something that is my big struggle, is being still, listening, maybe listening for, sorry, someone's knocking on my door. Listening and being still. So I would say those are probably some of my lows, is when I'm completely drained.
And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Michael Hyatt, but he talks about this idea of like investing in your self-care skills. And he talks about it gives you more energy when you take time. Stephen Covey also talks about it with the 7 habits of highly effective people. You take time away to sharpen the saw so that you're more effective at cutting down the tree. And it's the same concept of taking time to rest, to receive God's grace and love so that we can give that to others, to take time to reflect on what is working, what is not working.
Right.
And when you neglect yourself, you're actually hurting those you truly love and care about, because they're not getting the best version of you when you do have self neglect with whether it's sleep, exercise, eating. I mean, not even having time to spend just to be able to think and process. And like, I can relate to what you're saying. It is hard for me to rest, to just be like, okay, let me rest in the grace of God and see what really, reflect on his faithfulness. Where has he brought you? That's like hard to do. I don't know why. I guess maybe as strength coaches, we like to just go and do stuff and be efficient and productive. But sometimes we need to be.
Sit and watch movies. Like, if I'm watching a movie, I've got my phone researching something over here. I've got my to-do list in front of me, and my husband's like, "Just chill." And I'm like, "I've got so much to do."
Yeah, you're trying to max out your life.
I know.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. And then again, on the other side of the coin, we were just talking, me and Charlie, before the show a little bit earlier, in that, me and my wife, I feel like every weekend we've had something going on. It's like this person wants to hang out, or we have this birthday or whatever. And I'm like, we're stopped. No more filling the schedule. We're done. Like, we're going to hang out like on this weekend or this day, or one thing per weekend, because it's just too much, And,
it is, especially when I'm the people person and my husband is not a people person. And so, like, I'm like, yeah, let's go do something. And he's like, no, let's stay home.
Yeah. My wife's the opposite, and same thing for us. Like, for her, she is, like I told you, she's like one of the ultimate people's people. And she helps me in that way break out of my shell a little bit. But sometimes when it's like back to back to back, it's like, we got to slow down a little bit. But yes, that's a great point. Moving on from that. So, Coach, you've given us so much advice here for us as coaches, for other people who are listening. I have a ton of notes. But is there anything that's like at the top of your list in terms of like the best piece of coaching advice you've ever received?
The best advice came from Terry Jones, Coach TJ. He says, keep it simple. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be creative. It doesn't have to be the YouTube sensation of the year or whatever it may be. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Simple works, and your athletes will own it.
That's awesome.
So that is one of the best, because, coming out as a young strength coach, you're like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to use this type of periodization, and I'm going to use this Excel program, and I'm going to do this and this and this. But at the end of the day, keeping it simple.
That's awesome.
Keeping it simple is how we all got this profession in the first place, because it was simple.
That's awesome.
Lift weights.
And it's funny. I saw a thing on Twitter at one point. It was like my progression in my coaching philosophy as a strength coach. Someone had posted this and it said, simple, complex, simple. Like it can't be going simple. So that's a great point. What about spiritually? Any like really big spiritual advice you've received and would pass on to someone else?
Just love people. That's the best mission that you can be on. Every day, you don't have to be on a special mission trip to share your love for people. It can be while I'm walking in the door and I'm saying hello, or I'm talking and greeting people by name as they're walking around the weight room, or I just smile at somebody.
Yeah.
That is just sharing love with people. And I feel like that's something that sometimes we try to overdo, is we're trying to be like, oh, we've got to do this community service and we've got to do this mission trip. But really the best mission is going to be what you're doing in your day-to-day life, whether you're mopping a floor in your kitchen, that's mission. That's helping take care of your family, keeping everything clean for your family so that they can carry that on later on in their lives and share that. So really that's mine. It's just love everybody around you, because every day is a mission.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote. Some people say, they don't read the Bible a lot, but they might read you. And so you may be the only Bible that they ever read. Mm-hmm. So by living your life on mission, like with what you're talking about, smiling, carrying yourself with character, learning people's names, and just being a friendly, inviting person, something stands out about Coach Diltz. Like, why is she so friendly? Why she just has this joy about her, and that brings about like, okay, we're called to be a light among the darkness. We are called to be joyful, to be thankful, to be happy people, because we have the best news ever, that we have a relationship with God who loves us. And so, I've seen that in how you carry about yourself.
Well, thank you. I'm glad it was seen. Like I feel like I do that, but I'm glad it was seen.
I second that.
He's seeing it right now. Awesome. Well, Coach, we're going to finish with doing 3 fast finishers.
Okay.
So we do this on all the shows, all the episodes, and pretty much we're just going to ask you 3 quick questions. But your favorite book, your favorite Bible verse or story from the Bible, and then how would you define success? So the first one, once again, is your favorite book or a book you would recommend.
Favorite books or anything by John Gordon.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yep. Anything by John Gordon. I love the application of it. It's a story, and then you can see how it's applied. Mm-hmm. So that's my favorite book.
Awesome. And then favorite Bible verse or story?
I don't have a Bible verse, but let me get my little trusty little devotional in here. There is a reflection reading, and it's called I Stand by the Door, and it's by Samuel Moore Shoemaker. And it is just in a brief, because it's probably a 500-word little reflection, but it's about standing at the door and welcome people in. You don't want to be so far outside that you can't share anything with anybody, and you don't want to be so far in that all you're doing is studying and reading and those types of things. You want to be standing at the door so you can greet people that are at the door and converse with the people that are inside the door. And so you're learning from those inside the door, and you're greeting those and welcoming those people in. And that's just kind of a brief synopsis of the reflection. And it's one of my favorites. I read it over and over again. And I feel like as strength coaches, that's kind of what we are. We're the doorkeepers. We're the ones that are welcoming people in.
That is awesome. Really cool.
Yeah, that's a cool analogy. I was about to say it fits perfectly with what we do as strength and conditioning. Like if you're focused on your programming and you're on Excel all the time and you never build that relationship with athletes, you're not coaching, you're missing that aspect. And it's all about balance. That's a cool one. And then lastly, how would you define success?
Success to me is the impact the people around you make after they leave you.
Wow. That's a new one. Okay.
It's like the ripple effect, right? If you've impacted them, they're going to impact others.
Exactly. And I've been lucky enough and blessed enough and honored enough to be able to work at the University of Alabama, where I've been part of successful athletic endeavors. National championships, SEC championships with both of my main sports, But at the end of the day, I love the success to me is seeing my athletes. And even 15 years ago, I'm working with one of my athletes now, and the success that she's having and she's sharing with everybody around her. That's really what success is.
Wow. That's an awesome definition. I've never heard that before. It's great. If people wanted to get in contact with you, listeners wanted to reach out to you and connect with any of the stuff that you were talking about, how can they, what's the best way to contact
my
you?
email address, do I need to say it out loud?
No.
Okay, can it be posted?
Yeah,
100%.
We can post it.
Okay.
We can post it.
Okay, my email address, sorry, it's a weird one because it's still my maiden name. It's only been 13 years we've been married. But my email address.
I always wondered that. Like, where does this Martin come from?
Me
Okay.
too. I was wondering too.
Yeah,
And then what about social?
Name, if anybody was wondering.
And then what about social media, Coach? Do you do that?
I'm on Instagram, and it's just, I think it's Diltz Michelle. I'm same thing on Twitter. I'm rarely on Twitter, but I do check it. And then obviously on mainly just Instagram. It's a lot of what I do outside. It's not a lot of strength conditioning. I will post stuff about strength conditioning, but it's really just about the life I'm living.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. And then one of the things that we've been trying to do is pray for our guests at the end of the show. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing with us, what would be 2 or 3 things we could be praying for you specifically as we, kind of enter into the spring semester.
One of the definite things to pray for would be to help me with my discipline, to help me with centering so I can pour into me, so I can help continue to pour into others. That is definitely one that I need some prayers for. Also just health and safety of my athletes, and then patience for my daughter as she's hitting the preteen teenage years.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be a huge one. We're at 10 right now, starting middle school next year. Not quite sure how much patience we're going to be able to keep going forward.
Yeah, I'll definitely be, I'd love to pray for you right now and close us off on the show.
Thank you.
Dear Lord, we just thank you for Coach Michelle Diltz and just for her influence on so many different people, Lord. I just thank you for this episode and for allowing us to be able to come together to do this thing, Lord. We just give you the praise and glory for allowing us to have Built to Last as a ministry and as a way to connect. Lord, I ask specifically that you would be with Coach Diltz as she is striving to have more discipline this year and focus on time with you and self-care skills. And God, I pray that you would bless her in that area. I pray for a stronger reliance upon you for strength, and that she would be able to invest time and energy into self-reflection and into thinking about your faithfulness so that she can pour into others more effectively, God. I also pray for her daughter, Brady, that you would just allow that relationship that she has with her to be able to be fruitful, and may it just continue to grow and flourish. Give her patience with learning how to gently and lovingly just be with her daughter and instruct her in the Word of God and teach her what it means to be a woman of the faith and how to be a better person, God. And lastly, I pray for the health and safety of all the athletes at the University of Alabama, and especially with those that are in Coach Diltz's domain. I pray, God, that you would allow her to continue to have a strong influence over them, Lord, a positive influence. And Lord, again, we thank you for this ministry. We thank you for this amazing day. And may you be with all of us as we go about our day. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Built to Last podcast, where we encourage, equip, and empower coaches to live out their core values where they live, work, and wherever they build relationships. Have a blessed day, striving to build lasting impact.